Daf Yomi, Tractate, Sanhedrin, page 29, B. Top of the page, the words Lo Hayu Dvarim Me'olam, Huchzak Kafran. These matters never occurred. Meaning, I never admitted to this. The defendant assumes the presumptive status of one who falsely denies his debts, as the witness heard his admission. Consequently, he is not trusted to take an oath that he is exempt. Amar Rav Papa, Bereid Rav Bar Ada, Hachi Amrina and Mishmei de Rava, Kol Mili Dich Di, Lo Dichri Inashi. Rav Papa, son of Rav Acha Bar Ada, says, this is what we say in the name of Rava. The defendant is not rendered a liar because people do not remember all frivolous matters. Since the admission was not made seriously, perhaps the defendant forgot the incident. Therefore, his denial of its having occurred was not necessarily an outright lie. Ahu de'ach mein le edim lechavrei bechilte amar le menali biadech. Amar le hein amar ere v'shachve lehavo alach sahadi. Amar le la. Amar Rav Kahana ha amar le lo. The Gemara relates, there was a certain man who hid witnesses in the canopy above his bed to hear the statement of another. That certain man said to him, I have 100 dinars in your possession. The latter said to him, yes. The claimant then said, let those awake and those asleep bear witness about you. Hoping to induce him to agree to his testimony, as the respondent might assume that everyone was asleep. The latter said to him, no. When the matter came to court, Rav Kahana said, since he said no to him, his admission did not render him liable. Ahu de'ach min edim b'kivra lechavrei. Amar le manali biadech. Amar le hein chaye umesil hevo Allah sahadi. Amar le la. Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish ha amar le la. The Gemara relates another incident. There was a certain man who hid witnesses in a grave to hear the statement of another. A certain man said to him, I have 100 dinars in your possession. The latter said to him, yes. The claimant then said, let the living and the dead bear witness about you. The respondent said to him, no. Rabbi Shimon said, since he said no to him, his admission did not render him liable. Amar Ravina v'itmar v'itema Rav Papa Shema mina mi'ah Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav Tzorach Shi Amar Atem Edai Lo Shna Amar Ki Amar Love V'lo Shna Ki Amar Malve V'shatik Love Tama de Amar Love Lo Aval Ishatik Achanami. Ravina said, and some say Rav Papa said it, conclude from it that with regard to that which Rav Yehuda says, that Rav says that one needs to say the witness of the admission, you are my witness, that there is no difference between whether the debtor said it or whether there's no difference whether the creditor said it and whether the debtor remains silent. The inference is that the reason the sage is deemed the reported debtor exempt. In the above cases, the debtor explicitly said no, meaning he has not accepted witnesses, but had he remained silent, his admission would have indeed rendered him liable. Ahu dahavi karule kav rashu. Amar man masik bi ela ploni uploni Ato Tivu'uhu Ladina Kamed Rav Nachman. The Gemara relates there was a certain man whom people called a kav of debts, as everyone claimed debts from him, who once said, "Who can claim debts from me other than so-and-so and so-and-so? I do not owe money to as many as assumed." Those whom he admitted that he owed came and took him to judgment before Rav Nachman to claim what he owed them, and he responded in court that his admittance was in jest. Amar Rav Nachman, Adam asui shelo yashbiya as atzmo. Rav Nachman said a person is prone to make false statements so as not to make himself appear stated. It's possible that he might say falsely in public that he owes money in order that he should not be considered wealthy. Therefore, as long as he had not made a proper admission that he owes a specific sum to a specific individual, he is not liable. Masku Bey Zuze Basar de Shachiv Ato Tiva Inu Liorshim. The Gemara relates there was a certain man whom people called a mouse that lies on dinars, and he was a miser who did not benefit from his money, like a mouse that sits and safeguards gold dinars. This man said on his deathbed, so-and-so and so-and-so claim dinars from me. After he died, they came and sued the heirs. Asu l'kamei de Rabbi Yishmael, Rabbi Yossi, Amar lahu ki amrinan adam asui shelo lehashbia es atzmo hani mili mechayim aval achar misa lo. They came to judgment before Rabbi Yishmael, son of Rabbi Yossi. He said to them, when we say a person is prone to make false statements so as not to make himself appear stated, this statement applies to an admission during his lifetime. But after his death, meaning on his deathbed, this does not apply. Rather, we presume he told the truth. Paru palga taviinu ledina leidach palga ato l'kamed Rav Chia. Amar lahu kashem shadam asui shelo lehasbia es atzmo kach adam asui shelo lehashbia et panav. Amru le nezel v'nedar amar lahu kivar horezaken. The heirs paid half the amount of the claim. The claimants then sued them for the other half. They came to judgment before the rabbi, before Rabbi Chia. Rabbi Chia said to them, just as a person is prone to make false statements so as not to make himself appear stated, so too a person is prone to make false statements so as not to make his sons appear sated. One might claim falsely on his deathbed that he owes money so that his children will not be considered wealthy. Therefore, there is no room for a claim against the heirs. The heirs then said to him, if so, let us go and overturn the former verdict and retrieve the amount we paid the claimants. Rabbi Chia said to them, the elder, meaning Rabbi Yishmael, son of Rabbi Yossi, had already issued a ruling in this case, and it is not in my power to overturn this ruling. Hode b'fnei shnayim yikanu miyado kosvin im lav ein kosvin. If one made an admission in the presence of two witnesses that he owes money and they performed a formal act of acquisition with him to verify the admission, the witnesses can write a record of the admission in a document and sign it, thereby granting the creditor more rights. But if they did not perform a formal act of acquisition, they may not write a record of the admission in a document, as the debtor presumably wants the loan to retain its status by loan oral agreement, which grants fewer rights to the creditor than a loan with a promissory note. Rav Ami Amar Kosvin Rav Asi Amar Ein Kosvin Havi Ufta Avichash Lav Rav Laha the Rav Asi. If he made an admission in the presence of three witnesses and did not perform a formal act of acquisition with him, Rav Ami says they can write a record of admission of a document. Since the admission was made in the presence of three individuals who are considered a court, it is permitted for a court to write its verdicts, and Rav Asi says they may not write it in a document. Perhaps the debtor intended for them to serve only as witnesses, not as a court. There was an incident in which a person admitted his debt before three witnesses, and Rav was concerned for this opinion of Asi and ruled that they may not write a record of the admission. Amar Vada bar Ava ha Odisa Zimnin Katvinan Vizimnin lo Katvinan Kanifi Viatvi lo Katvinan Kanifnu Ihu Katvinan. Ravada bar Ava says, with regard to this document of admission, sometimes we write it and sometimes we do not write it. If the three witnesses were gathered and sitting when the debtor made his admission for them, we do not write it, and perhaps he did not intend for them to serve as a court. But if the debtor gathered them, we write the document of admission as a fact that he took care to bring three people and not just two proofs that he intended for them to serve as a court. Rav Amar Afilu Kanif Nehu Ihu Lo Katvinan Ad de Amar Lahu Havu Alai de Yane. Rav says even if he gathered them, we do not write it unless he says to them, be my judges. Rava Amar Afilu Kanafayu Ihu Lo Katvinan Ad Amar Lahu Havi Alai Dinayu. Rava says even if he gathered them, we do not write it unless he says to them, be my judges. Mar Baravashi Amar Afilu Amar Havu Alai Dinai Diani Lo Kasvinan Ela the Kasvi Duchta Vishalchi Mizamni Le Devedina. Mar Ravashi says, even if he says, be my judges, we do not write it unless they establish a place for judgment and send messengers and summon him to court. Unless the entire procedure of an admission in court is implemented, the debtor may not have intended that they serve as a court with regard to this matter. Ho de bimital tali v'kanumiyado kosvin in bimlav ein kosvin bimikarkai lo kanumiyado mai ameimar amar ein kosvin marzutra amar kosvin v'hachasa kosvin. If he made an admission with regard to movable property that he owes, and the witnesses performed a formal act of acquisition with him, they can write a record of the admission in a document. But if they did not perform a formal act of acquisition, they may not write a record of the admission. But if he made admission with regard to land, and they did not perform a formal act of acquisition with him, what is the halacha? Is it considered as though an act of acquisition was performed, as land is always available for collection? Maimar says they may not write it. Marzutra says they may write it, and the halacha is they may write it. Ravina ikla de le dimharya Amar le Ravdimi bar Ravhuna mi dimharya lervina mitaltali v'inhu b'einaihu mai Amar le kimikarkai damu Ravashi Amar kevan demichasri Guvnai Guv Yaina Guvaina Lo. Ravina happened to come to Damharia. Rav Dimi bar Rav Huna of Damharia said to Ravina, if one makes an admission that he owes movable property that is extant, it is available to be taken immediately. And what is halacha? Should it be considered like land, as it is similarly available for collection, and therefore the witnesses can write a record of the admission? Ravina said to him, it is considered like land. Rav Ashi says, since it still lacks collection, meaning it has not been physically transferred from part to the other, it is not considered like land, and the witness may not write a record for the admission unless the debtor asks them to write it. Hahi odita delo havi ketiv ba amar lena tuvu vechutumu vehavu le abai v'rava de amri tarvaihu hainu deresh lakish. With regard to a certain document of admission, the following statement was not written. He, the one making the admission, said to us, write a deed and sign it, and give it to the creditor. Abai and Rava both say that this is a case in which the principle of Reish Lakish is applicable. The Amar Reish Lakish, Chazaka ein ha'edim chosmin al hashtar, ela im kein nase gadol. As Reish Lakish says, there is a presumption that witnesses do not sign on the document unless the deal was transacted with each party being an adult, even if it is not mentioned explicitly in the document that the witness has verified this. This reflects a principle that a document is not written by a scribe and signed by witnesses unless they know that the action to which it attests was performed appropriately. In light of this, the fact that a certain detail is missing from the wording of the document does not prove that the detail did not take place, as the action was presumably performed properly. Consequently, a document of admission lacking the sentence, he said to us, write a deed and sign it, and give it to the creditor, is valid. Maskif la Rav Papi, Item Rav Huna bereid Rav Yehoshua. Mi ikamidi di anan lo yadinan, the Sofer de Beidina yadi. Rav Papi objects to this, and some say it is Rav Huna, the son of Rav Yehoshua, who raised an objection. Is there anything that we, the sages, do not know, and the scribes of the court do know? Since not all the sages are aware that the witnesses of an admission cannot write a deed of admission unless the one making the admission asks them to, the scribes certainly cannot be expected to ensure that this condition is fulfilled. She'alinu le'safrei de Abaye v'yadi le'safrei de Rava v'yadi. The Gemara relates that Abaye's scribes were asked whether they were aware of this halacha, and they answered that they were aware of it. Rava's scribes were also asked, and they were also aware of it. Apparently, since writing documents is their profession, scribes are aware of the relevant halachot. Hahi odita dehavi kativ be duchran pit game. The Gemara recounts there was a certain document of admission in which it was written that it was a record of the proceedings that took place in the presence of the witnesses.